Iran is being obliterated by the military might of USA. But the question is, if America is so powerful, why hasn't Iran and in particular the IRGC surrendered? The United States has the world's largest military. According to Department of Defense, the defense budget of United States is $1 trillion, which is larger than next several countries combined. USA has aircraft carriers, stealth bombers, nuclear submarines, and military bases across the globe. Whereas on the other side, Iran's defense budget is approximately 9.23 billion US dollars, with literally no air force. We all know that Washington has imposed crippling economic sanctions on Iran. A total of 100 billion US dollars of frozen Iranian assets globally. Its military leaders and nuclear scientists have been assassinated. Iran has also been subjugated to cyber attacks and has been attacked 3 times in the last 1 year by Israel and USA. Yet instead of backing down like Iraq, Afghanistan and Venezuela, Iran keeps on resisting. Not because it's stronger than the United States, but because surrender could be even more dangerous for Iran's leadership than continuing the confrontation. So to understand why, I'll take you back to nearly a half century. Iran was not always ruled by the Shia Muslim clerics. In 1951, Mossadegh Hossein was the Prime Minister of Iran who led a nationalist government. His style of politics was anti-monarchical, and the hallmark of his government was the nationalization of Iranian oil industry. Driven by nationalism and social reforms, Mossadegh aimed at nationalizing the Iranian oil industry controlled by the British through the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. The Anglo-Iranian Oil Company changed its name to British Petroleum since 1954, when its assets were nationalized by the Iranian government. The move was widely popular amongst Iranians who believed that finally they would have their hands on their wealth of oil. However, at that time, the Cold War paranoia was at its peak. The US government feared that Iran will fall into Soviet hands. So, together the US and the British government launched a covert operation known as Operation Ajax. As per estimates, both governments spent up to $5 million US dollars to overthrow Mossadegh and bribe his rivals. The aim of this operation was to overthrow the democratically elected Prime Minister Mossadegh. The plan involved inciting protests, funding dissident groups, planting propaganda in newspapers, and funding military officials loyal to the Shah of Iran. When power was seized from Mossadegh via military coup, the Shah who had fled Iran earlier returned. Now Iran was ruled by Shah, a staunch ally of Americans. This was the turning point of Iran's history. A democratically elected prime minister was overthrown with Western support, laying the seeds for what the world now knows as 1979 Iranian Revolution. In 1979, the Iranian Revolution overthrew the US-backed King Reza Shah Pahlavi and established the Islamic Republic. Soon afterward came the hostage crisis on 4th November 1979. When 66 Americans were taken hostage in American embassy in the capital city of Tehran. Out of 66 Americans, 52 were held until 20th January 1981. Since then, relations between Washington and Tehran have remained deeply hostile. Over the decades, Iran has experienced sanctions, diplomatic isolation, cyber operations, and targeted killings. As per estimates, Iran has suffered a total loss of up to 10 trillion US dollars. One of the most substantial moments came in 2020, when General Qasem Soleimani, head of the elite Quds force of IRGC, was killed near Baghdad's international airport in Iraq by a targeted US drone strike. Rather than changing Iran's overall strategy, it reinforced the leadership's belief that compromise alone would not guarantee security. Inside Tehran, many officials believe that external pressure has continued regardless of whether Iran adopted a confrontational or more diplomatic approach. That perception shapes almost every major strategic decision today. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has said that every time they have trusted the US, they have been stabbed in the back through aggressive offensive military campaigns. Even before Operation Epic Fury, which started on 28 February 2026, Iran and USA were actively involved in negotiation talks in Doha, Qatar. Iran is a Muslim majority country, but here's the catch. Unlike most of other Muslim countries, Iranians follow the Shia sect of Islam, which is a Muslim minority sect. Globally, Shias represent up to 15% of Muslim population, but Iran, almost 95% of the population follows the Shia sect of Islam. Iran's refusal to surrender to the US and West is deeply rooted in the Shia theology. In Shia theology, the faithfuls are staunch supporters and believers of redemptive suffering and martyrdom, drawing direct parallels to the tragedy of Karbala. This Shia set of belief views resistance against perceived tyranny and imperialism as a spiritual obligation, duty, and obedience to God. For many countries, losing a conflict might mean changing governments, alliances, or leaders at key appointments only. For Iran's leadership, they often portray the stakes as much higher. The ruling establishment sees maintaining political control as essential to preserve the Islamic Republic itself. The hardliners and power centers within the regime and the IRGC have repeatedly argued that if they appear weak under external pressure, it could encourage further demands from foreign governments like Israel or embolden domestic opposition. Also, the whole narrative of IRGC and Islamic government in Iran revolves around defiance and non-obedience to the West and Israel led by the US. So from that perspective, surrender isn't viewed as the end of a military dispute. It's actually viewed as a potential threat to the system of government itself, an existential threat to the revolution and current system of government, where presidents and elected leaders come and go, but the supreme leader holds absolute power till death. So even if we agree with this assessment or not, understanding this perception helps explain why Iranian leaders frequently frame resistance as a matter of national survival. Iran is ranked 14th on Global Firepower Index and knows that it cannot match the United States, which is ranked first in the conventional military power. Iran fields approximately 400 fixed-wing airframes across its conventional and Revolutionary Guard branches. The fleet is heavily eclectic, ranging from Western aircraft purchased prior to the 1979 revolution, such as the iconic F-14 Tomcats, F-4 Phantoms, and F-5 Tigers, to later acquired Soviet-era jets like the MiG-29. A much smaller navy and a significantly lower defense budget of $9.23 billion. So instead of trying to fight symmetrically, Iran has spent decades developing an asymmetric strategy. This includes ballistic missiles capable of striking regional targets, large number of locally manufactured drones like the Shahed 36, fast attack boats operating in the Persian Gulf, underground military facilities to protect them from bunker buster munitions, and relationships with the armed groups like Hezbollah and Hamas across parts of Middle East. The idea isn't necessarily to defeat the United States militarily. It's to make any potential conflict more costly, unpredictable, and for indefinite period of time. And military planners sometimes describe this as deterrence through imposing costs. As per unconfirmed reports, US cost of war in the greater Middle East, which involve countering Iranian influence, a cost cover of $5.8 trillion specifically containing and confronting Iran over a period of 4 decades has been spent. Another reason Iran believes it has leverage is geography. One of the world's most strategically important waterways, the Strait of Hormuz. About 20% of global oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz. A total of 20 million barrels of crude oil flows on different vessels through the strait connecting Persian Gulf to the international markets. Iran has repeatedly stated that if its security were seriously threatened, the strait could become part of the broader confrontation. Even temporary disruptions could affect shipping costs, insurance premiums, and global energy prices. During the war, approximately 4.8 million barrels of oil passes through the strait, which is 1/4 of the total oil in pre-war era. While many believe a prolonged closure would also hurt Iran economically, as 2 million barrels of Iranian oil also serves Asian markets, which will drop to zero in case of war. There is another factor that often receives less attention, that is, history. Iran has a long national history and a strong sense of Persian identity that predates the modern state by thousands of years. Iran has a civilization which is 6,000 years old. It has for centuries absorbed various conquests but maintained cultural independence. Political leaders frequently invoke that history when speaking about sovereignty and resistance. During periods of external pressure, governments often use national identity to encourage unity. But that doesn't mean every Iranian supports every government policy. Public opinion within Iran is diverse. A recent leaked government report suggested that minimum 70% of the people are dissatisfied with current government system and want major political changes. But appeals to national independence have remained a recurring theme across different periods of tension. So, why isn't Iran surrendering to the United States? Because from perspective of Iran's leadership, they believe surrender could weaken the state they are trying to preserve. From Shia theology, they believe martyrdom is obedience to God. From cultural perspective, they are rebels who love their cultural independence. They rely on asymmetric capabilities rather than matching American military strength directly. They also believe that geography gives them strategic leverage, and they see resistance as central to maintaining both deterrence, political legitimacy, cultural independence, and religious duty. Iran sees this war as the ultimate opportunity to maintain their leverage on Strait of Hormuz and probably aim for nuclear weapons as well. Whether that strategy ultimately succeeds or imposes greater costs on Iran itself remains a result which time will tell. But one thing is clear, this confrontation is not simply about weapons. It's about history, loyalty to faith, deterrence, human element, and national identity, and two governments with fundamentally different views of security and power. If you enjoyed this breakdown, then consider supporting our channel. I'm your host Z from the End State, and I'll see you in the next video.